The Bone Brothers by Ron Fortier. Life and death are absolutes. You get born, live, and you die. The end. Period. That is, if you live anywhere else in the world except Cape Noir. You see, Cape Noir, there are no absolutes. There is only hell. And it just goes on and on and on. Not so long ago, when things were a little quieter, there were two major crime dons in the city. Big Swede Jorgensen controlled everything from the 8th Street Bridge down to the docks of Old Town. The other half of the city, from Midtown to the ritzy northern boroughs of Marlow Heights, was under the thumb of boss Topper Wilde. Wilde was a man of reckless appetites, and as much as he loved women, food, and the like, he loved power even more and saw himself as some sort of old world Caesar, which is why he detested the delicate balance of authority that existed in the underworld between himself and his hated rival, Big Swede. It bothered him daily, no matter what he was about, whether it was doing business or entertaining the high mucky mucks of Cape Noir's special elite with a lavish dinner. The fact that he only controlled one half of Cape Noir wore away at Wilde like an itch he could never scratch. This arrangement had lasted for 10 years, much to everyone's acceptance, and no one really believed Boss Wilde would have the balls to upset the apple cart. Thing is, no one knew just how crazy he really was. The fact that he employed the Bone Brothers should have been a serious clue. But then again, this is the underworld we are discussing and not high society. Jack and Tommy were identical twins born seconds apart to a hooker on Locust Avenue. Jack was the older by 3 seconds. The story had it he was born with Tommy holding on to his heels. Their mother sold him for drug money when they were a year old, and the rest of their legend is lost on the streets of the past. All you need to know is that by the time the boys were in their teens, they were two of the most sadistic, cruel souls ever dumped on the mean streets. Somehow, the Bonello brothers, that was their mother's name, survived. No one ever knew who sired them, as if it mattered. Lots of folks think it was the devil himself, and they could have been right considering the carnage they caused. Dark-haired, piercing black eyes, and ruggedly handsome to a fault, the boys were exact copies of each other. That this was the cause of constant sibling rivalry was what prompted them, at 13, to have tattoos etched on the back of their right hands. Jack had a black ace, and Tommy's was of a red skull. Instinctively, the boys knew their future careers would be mapped with blood and guts. Bottom line is they liked causing pain. They were tough and they were brutal. It was the law of the streets, and both brothers took it with a savage relish. Depending solely on themselves, they grew and prospered as petty thugs until one day when they were summoned to the presence of Boss Wilde. The crime boss had heard stories about the brothers and their exploits, and he saw in them tremendous potential, with the right training, of course, the kind only he could provide. He offered them wealth, luxury, and more mayhem than they could ever imagine. The brothers accepted immediately, and under the tutelage of Wilde's lieutenant, Harry Beast, they were soon transformed into cold-blooded killers. Of course, there were several other soldiers in the gang who had held those positions prior to the brothers' arrival. Once Jack and Tommy came aboard, some of them mysteriously disappeared one by one. Both Beast and Wilde approved. It was enough of an abject lesson that word spread throughout Cape Noir like wildfire. You did not mess with the Bone Brothers. So back to our narrative of Boss Wilde's annoyance at controlling one half of the city. For 10 years, he contained his lust for power with Herculean resolve. But it was only a matter of time. Obsessions have a way of swelling in the soul until nothing else remains but a single desire that has to be met. Thus, Topper Wilde, after months of careful planning, set forth a wild and daring scheme that would ultimately lead to his total dominance of Cape Noir. The first step in this devious strategy was to make Big Swede look like the instigator. On the Lower East Side of the once fashionable Withington Park, Wilde owned a popular and highly profitable bordello operated by one Sadie Levine. It was said that half of her clientele were made up of the members of the city council and the police department. Wilde ordered the Bone brothers to fall upon that establishment like a biblical plague and exterminate everyone within the house, leaving no witnesses behind. Then they were to leave clues that would point a finger at Big Swede. After all, who would believe that Wilde would destroy one of his own places? Once people thought Big Swede had broken the truce, the uproar would be great on both sides of the political track. It would then be simple for Wilde to fuel his spark and from it build a fire that would devour his nemesis. Naturally, Jack and Tommy were only too eager to carry out their contract. Arming themselves with half a dozen pistols and wielding 2 Thompson submachine guns, the brothers descended upon the old sleepy brownstone in the dead of night, long after midnight when things were quiet as a tomb. Most of the house's inhabitants had long succumbed to slumber from either too much booze or sex. Having themselves been customers on several occasions, they were all too familiar with the building's layout. They entered via a kitchen door facing the back alley. Using silences, they took out the kitchen staff and then, like ghosts, made their way into the parlor. Henry, the piano player, and several of the girls who were not asleep were lounging about, smoking dope and drinking cheap bourbon. Only a single table lamp lit the huge, overly furnished main room. When the brothers emerged from the back door, the girls and the musician were hardly aware of their presence until Jack raised the machine gun and opened fire. The bullets cut across the room like lead, encased bees, and tore their victims apart. Blood and flesh spewed up everywhere, and what screams arose were easily drowned away by the gunfire. "Let's go," Jack snapped, rushing towards the stairs. Now that they had virtually wakened the dead, they had to work fast to make sure no one could escape. At the top of the stairs, they ran into the madam of the house, Sadie Levine. She was coming out of her private room, fumbling with a handgun. At the sight of the brothers, she gasped and dropped her pistol. Laughing, Tommy grabbed her by the neck, pulled her to the railing, and threw her over. Sadie screamed once, and then her body crashed into the hardwood floor below, snapping her neck. "Nice move," Jack said. Tommy replied. "Guess fat cows can't fly." It was the end of their witty repartee, as by now scores of doors were popping open as dozens of whores and their dates rushed out to see what had shattered their dreams. For the next 20 minutes, the brothers were busy dispensing their lead greetings to one and all in that ill-fated house of pleasure. 20 short minutes to snuff out the lives of 20 men and women, not counting the 6 in the parlor and the 3 in the kitchen. 29 dead. It was a new record for the brothers, and clearly one they were quite happy with. As they were walking down the circular flight of stairs, having made sure no one was left breathing behind them, the brothers laughed and joked. As they were crossing the parlor, they heard a soft groan, and both of them reacted like skittish cats, instantly alert, guns ready. Tommy was closest to the sound, and looking down beside an overturned chair, he found the source. A young, painted girl, her face half hidden in the shadows, was staring up at him from a pool of her own blood. How she had stayed alive after taking so many hits was nothing short of a miracle. Tommy was impressed, and he leaned over to see if the bitch would say anything. She did. She gasped and said, "Thank you." Tommy Bonello couldn't believe it. Huh? But the skinny girl was dead, and there was no taking back the gesture. What did she say? Jack asked, having been too far away to hear the words. Tommy looked at his brother, part of his suit smeared with dozens of brown blood splotches, and then back at the dead girl at his feet. Something cold snaked into the pit of his stomach, and he shivered. She said, "Thank you." That's nuts. Yeah, I know. Well, forget it. Come on. We still got work to do. They then proceeded to drop bedding slips on the floor that came from one of Big Swede's racing joints. There would be just enough evidence to point the finger at Jorgensen. In all, the Bone Brothers had taken all of 35 minutes to do their dirty work. Walking away through the smelly back alley, Jack slapped his twin on the back and chuckled. Man, I'm starved. Let's find us a diner and get some chow. Okay, Jack, sounds good to me. What Tommy didn't tell his brother was that he wasn't hungry at all. Rather, he was ill at ease. The dead girl's parting words bothered the hell out of him. Why did she thank him for doing her? Was her life that goddamn bad that she was grateful to him for ending it? Now, how screwy was that? Screwy. Still, he heard the words in his head, and they simply would not go away. End of chapter 1.